The transport vessel shuddered slightly as it broke through the turbulent atmosphere of Relkar 4, a planet cloaked in violet mists and crimson clouds. Beneath the cloud cover stretched endless shadowed plains, jagged rock formations, and towering mushroom-like flora swaying gently in the hot wind. From the wide glass panel of the descending dropship, 20 cadets, humanoid and alien alike, stared down at the testing grounds. The air buzzed with anticipation and fear, although few would admit it. This was not a simulation. This was a live survival exam, and failure here meant more than just a poor grade. It meant being hunted. Kai Moreno, the only human among the group, sat quietly in the back. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were alert. He had reviewed everything he could about the exam, but the instructors had been intentionally vague. All that was known was that the cadets would be dropped into a designated sector of Relkar 5 and told to survive for 12 hours while evading detection by an apex predator native to the region, the vorgren stalker. Rumors about the creature were whispered among the alien cadets. It was said to possess a triple-layered visual system, capable of detecting thermal signatures, ultraviolet patterns, and even electromagnetic pulses. Its limbs were long and sinewy, its movements silent, and its brain hyper-adaptive. It did not simply chase. It studied, learned, and predicted. Camouflage suits had failed against it in the past. Sound dampeners, scent suppressants, none had guaranteed safety. The only rule of the exam was simple: remain undetected. The ship landed with a hiss of hydraulics. One by one, the cadets disembarked into the thick, humid air. The terrain was dense with bioluminescent undergrowth, brittle trees with translucent bark, and strange insect calls echoing from unseen depths. Above, the light from Relkar's twin moons cast long, warped shadows across the uneven ground. A tall Zarnian officer, his chitin armor gleaming and iridescent, stepped forward. His mandibles clicked as he addressed the group. You have exactly 30 minutes to prepare. At the mark, the vorgren will be released into the zone. Your task is to evade it for 12 hours. Each of you carries a biometric tag. If the creature gets within 2 meters of you, the tag will pulse. 3 pulses, and your run is over. You will be extracted. Do not attempt to engage it. Do not attempt to outrun it. If you are tagged 3 times, consider yourself lucky to be leaving in one piece. He gave a sharp gesture, and the countdown began. Immediately, chaos erupted. The alien cadets dispersed in all directions, each relying on the tools of their own species. The Averell twins activated translucent cloaks, shimmering briefly before vanishing from sight. The Sorithian cadet sprayed his entire body with anti-scent vapor and sank into a crevice, motionless. Another, from a race called the Acranthi, pulled a cloaking net from her pack and draped it over herself before blending into the base of a glowing tree. Kai watched them scatter. He had no advanced tech. The rules were clear. Each cadet could carry only what he or she could wear or hold. Kai had chosen not to take any specialized equipment. No cloak, no neural jammer, no dampener. Instead, he had studied every terrain scan of Relkar 4 that the Academy's database had offered, focusing not on gadgets, but on terrain features. How light fell, where water gathered, how wind moved, and what sounds traveled furthest. He walked slowly, deliberately, choosing a path that descended into a natural ravine choked with ferns and thick soil. The air was cooler here, the sounds more muffled. He knelt and picked up a handful of dark gray mud, rubbing it between his fingers. It was dense, cool, and smelled faintly of minerals and decay. Perfect. He stripped off his outer layer, leaving only his skin-tight base layer beneath, and began covering his exposed skin in the mud. He applied it carefully, not just smeared but molded into uneven patterns. He pressed pebbles and bits of bark into his arms and legs, shaping a texture that would break up his silhouette. It was an old trick, something he'd read about in human military history. Not camouflage in the modern sense, but concealment in the rawest form. No energy fields, no emission suppression. Just earth, shadow, and stillness. Once his body was covered, he began scouting a location. He ignored obvious hiding spots. Hollows in trees, caves, overhangs. Those would be the first places the predator would search. Instead, he found a narrow patch between two giant roots of a fallen tree, where the light barely reached. Above him, the tree's bulbous mushrooms glowed dimly, but their spores drifted downward, clouding visibility. Kai lay flat on his stomach, dug shallow grooves around his body to prevent water from pooling, and let the mud settle over him. He had 30 minutes before the creature was released. He closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. Slow, shallow. He counted each inhale, then each exhale. His heart rate dropped. He had learned to do this during long rifle exercises back on Earth, where missing a breath meant missing a shot. Now it would mean being hunted. Far above, in the observation vessel orbiting Relkar 4, instructors watched each cadet through satellite feeds. The Zarnian officer narrowed his compound eyes as he cycled through the visuals. Most cadets glowed like lanterns in thermal mode. Despite their cloaks, movement and heat betrayed them. But one signal was barely there, masked not by technology, but by environmental blending. "Who is that?" he asked one of the technicians. "Kai Moreno, human." The officer said nothing. He simply leaned forward and watched. At the exact moment the timer hit 0, the vorgren's containment field disengaged with a deep, pulsing hum. On the edge of the testing grounds, a steel door slid open into darkness. From within, a low, guttural growl rumbled, followed by a flash of movement, too fast to register. The hunt had begun. Within minutes, the first pulse triggered, then a second. Screams echoed through the trees. One cadet, cloaked in a shimmer field, was caught off guard as the predator materialized behind her and tagged her biometric device. She barely had time to activate her extraction beacon before vanishing in a beam of light. In another quadrant, 2 cadets had tried hiding together. Their combined sense, though chemically masked, confused the creature for only seconds before it detected breathing patterns. Another 2 pulses. Within the first hour, 6 had been extracted. The vorgren moved like smoke, silent, coiled, and deliberate. Its skin rippled with bioluminescence, changing colors as it adapted to its surroundings. It left no tracks, no scent. But it left fear. And yet, it never went near Kai. In the cold mud between the roots, Kai remained still. Insects crawled over his hands and neck. His muscles ached from the tension, but he did not move. A single bead of sweat rolled down his temple and disappeared into the dirt. A shadow passed above him once, a moment of silence, of death, waiting to see if the ground breathed. But it didn't. The vorgren paused for 3 seconds, tilted its head, then moved on. Kai remained exactly where he was, his body a silent monument to forgotten human knowledge. Not flashy, not high-tech, just right. Far above, the Zarnian officer let out a soft click of disbelief. The night on Relkar 4 stretched long and treacherous, but Kai had already won the first hour, not by running, but by disappearing. Hours dragged on across the blood-tinted plains of Relkar 4, and the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing moment. The once proud cadets, armored in alien technology and born into advanced civilizations, were breaking. Fear clawed through the ranks, unseen but omnipresent, like the predator itself. Each breath taken too loudly, each twig broken beneath a careless step, was a potential death sentence. The promise of honor that came with passing the exam had morphed into a primal desire for survival. Kai remained hidden, buried in silence, his form indistinguishable from the forest floor. The thick coat of earth and ash had dried to a crust across his arms, chest, and cheeks. Only his eyes moved, slowly, with purpose. He watched, listened, and learned. The vorgren was hunting with a pattern, not mindlessly but with intelligence. It looped back through zones it had already cleared, testing for movement, waiting for panic. Kai could tell. He had seen the same behavior in big cats from Earth documentaries, creatures that stalked and teased their prey before striking. The only difference was that the vorgren had been bred for war. Not far from his position, a Cerithian cadet had wedged himself under a cluster of thick fungus stalks, encased in a scent-masking bubble. His dark blue skin blended well with the mottled soil, but his rapid breathing gave him away. Every breath sent slight ripples through the translucent barrier surrounding him, pulses the vorgren could detect. Kai's eyes followed a shadow moving in the distance. Silent, sinuous. The creature stepped with such delicacy that even the brittle twigs beneath its claws did not crack. It tilted its elongated head as it approached the Cerithian's hiding spot, nostrils flaring as it inhaled long and deep. The cadet's body stiffened. His gloved fingers clenched the soil. His other hand hovered over his emergency beacon. Too late. The vorgren pounced in a blur. The scent barrier shattered like thin glass, and the cadet screamed, a high-pitched, guttural noise. The creature did not kill. It didn't need to. Its long, curved talon touched the cadet's shoulder. 1, 2, 3 taps. A warning, a signal. The cadet was marked. The beacon blinked red, and moments later, he was extracted in a flash of light, body limp with defeat. Kai closed his eyes briefly, exhaling through his nose. The Cerithian had made the mistake of relying entirely on tech. It was the same story repeating over and over again. Cadets born into species where evolution had been outsourced to machines did not know how to live without assistance. They were taught tactics from books, but none had practiced stillness, silence, or instinct. A low rustle pulled Kai's attention back. To his left, hidden beneath a low overhang of stone and vines, crouched a Cerevian female, her iridescent scales shifting colors to mimic the terrain. Her kind was known for advanced adaptive skin. She had passed every stealth test in the academy, but even now her camouflage flickered with minute inconsistencies. Stress altered her skin's bioelectric charge, creating micro-blurs around her edges. The vorgren, too intelligent to ignore such details, circled nearby. It didn't charge immediately. It watched, as if amused. Kai watched, too. The Cerevian was trying to remain calm, but her chest rose and fell too quickly. Her eyes darted between shadows. Her body betrayed her. When the vorgren struck, it came like a coiled spring. No growl, no sound, just speed and pressure. 3 light taps and she was gone. Another flash, another loss. The overhead command vessel received each extraction signal with growing unease. The instructors no longer sipped drinks or exchanged commentary. They stared at the live feeds in silence. Out of 20 cadets, 9 had been removed in under 4 hours. Of the 11 remaining, most were in motion, repositioning, seeking cover, or worse, trying to outrun the predator. Only 1 heat signature had remained completely stationary since the beginning. 1 tag had never been approached. Kai. The Zarnian commander leaned over the display, narrowing his eyes. "Zoom in on the human," he ordered. The screen flickered, revealing a murky patch of terrain. It took a moment for the visual filters to isolate the outline of Kai's body. Covered in dried mud, embedded with leaves and bark, he looked more like a rock than a cadet. The commander spoke again. "Thermal?" The technician switched modes. The screen glowed with reds and oranges as the heat signatures of the environment came into view. But in the center of the screen, where Kai lay, there was a faint blot of warmth, barely distinguishable from the surrounding soil. "Incredible," the commander muttered. "He's reduced his thermal output, without assistance. No suit, no gel, no dampener." Kai remained still, letting time pass. His joints ached, and a dull cramp had formed in his side, but he knew better than to move. He remembered a lesson his grandfather had once taught him in the forests of Patagonia. The best hunters wait. The moment you act out of discomfort, the forest owns you. He had not understood it as a boy. Now it made perfect sense. A sudden crack in the distance made him shift his gaze. Two alien cadets, an Invar male and a Talayan female, had decided to travel together, hoping safety in numbers would fool the predator. The Invar species had advanced echolocation, and he tried to use it to detect movement, but his pulses echoed off the jagged stones unpredictably. The Talayan had mapped a route through the terrain using a neural implant, yet every step she took was just slightly too loud. She winced with each one, realizing too late that Relkar's soil betrayed even the lightest pressure. The vorgren didn't chase. It followed, quiet, slow, predatory. Kai could barely see it through the brush, but its presence was unmistakable. The air shifted. The birds stopped chirping. A tension vibrated across the leaves like a wire pulled taut. The cadets moved faster now, sensing something was wrong, but panic was already at their heels. Then came the screeches. 2 flashes. Gone. Kai remained where he was, eyes half-lidded, his face caked in streaks of gray and black. His breath was so shallow it barely stirred the grass near his lips. More time passed. A drop of rain fell from a high branch and landed on his shoulder, rolling slowly down his neck. He did not move. He did not blink. The planet exhaled around him, wind shifting through fungal fronds, insects humming, distant roars echoing across the ridges. Relkar was alive, and Kai had become part of it. The count dropped again. Now only 5 cadets remained. Above, in the observation vessel, murmurs spread among the command staff. A strategy meeting was held in a separate room, and the Zarnian commander was summoned. "This human," a gray-skinned Tralaxian instructor began, "is applying techniques that aren't part of our curriculum." "He has no enhancements," another added, "not even environmental monitors." "He's using mud," the commander said, almost in disbelief. "Yes, mud, patience, and behavior mimicry." The room fell into thoughtful silence. The Tralaxian instructor looked up from her notes. "We thought humans were reckless, unpredictable, short-lived, and impulsive." The commander's mandibles clicked. "Perhaps unpredictability and discipline are not mutually exclusive." Back on the surface, dusk was approaching. Relkar's moons had shifted, casting a deep crimson haze across the terrain. The predator slowed its hunt. It seemed frustrated. Its usual tactics had flushed out every cadet, except one. It circled Kai's quadrant twice. On the 3rd pass, it crept closer than before. Kai could hear its breath, feel the low-frequency rumble of its throat. The vorgren's foot landed inches from his hand. Mud cracked slightly under the weight. Kai remained motionless. The creature paused, head tilting. Its nostrils flared. It studied the lump in the ground. Its inner eyelid blinked twice. Then it exhaled sharply, its breath hot and rank against Kai's skin. No reaction. The vorgren growled, low and dissatisfied, then turned and melted into the trees. Only then did Kai blink. Slowly. Quietly. His mind was clear, his confidence unshaken. The predator had tested him and passed him by. The night was far from over, but the human had survived the worst moment yet. The moons of Relkar 4 dipped lower across the bruised sky, their light now faint and smeared like streaks of drying blood through the clouds. The planet's breath grew colder, and the hum of nocturnal life shifted pitch. Somewhere in the canopy, a flock of spiny, feathered creatures erupted into flight, their panicked screeches spiraling into the air. In the ravine below, Kai remained half-buried beneath damp layers of soil and root, his muscles rigid with purpose, his senses finely tuned to the weight of every heartbeat. He no longer thought in terms of time. Time, in this moment, was not relevant. The only truth that mattered was pressure. Pressure in the air, pressure in his lungs. pressure on the branches above him that creaked beneath something heavy and weighting. Somewhere nearby, the predator had changed its rhythm. The vorgren had shifted into a new behavior pattern, one Kai recognized from a hunting study on Earth. The creature had moved beyond active stalking and into the phase of psychological pressure. It no longer chased, it lured, it wanted to force a mistake. And now, it was doubling back, returning to places it had already passed, but this time in complete silence. Kai could hear almost nothing except the low hiss of wind through the gorge and the infrequent drip of condensation falling from leaf tips. But the air felt heavier than before, as if coiled muscle hovered just outside his periphery. He adjusted his breathing again, short, shallow, silent. Insects crawled across his chest, one of them settling beneath his collar. He ignored it. He had to. A single twitch could be his undoing. Then he heard it. A sound not from the beast, but from one of the remaining cadets. A distant shuffle. Not far. Not careful. Kai didn't know who it was, only that someone else had broken discipline. The sound was followed by a sharp, sudden exhale, and then the faintest thump. A foot hitting rock, a careless turn, a fall. The vorgren moved. Kai didn't see it at first. He only felt the terrain react, the pulse of displaced air, the tremor in the moss, the sudden retreat of nearby creatures. A dark blur swept through the trees above, vanishing in the blink of an eye. The sound that followed was not a scream, but a strangled gasp. 3 dull pulses, then silence. Another extraction beacon triggered. Now only 4 cadets remained. The predator's hunt was more focused now. It moved with purpose, with intelligence sharpened by frustration. The remaining targets had grown too few, too spread out, and the one it had sensed but failed to detect, the human, had somehow eluded its instincts. That, more than anything, disturbed it. Kai's ears caught a new rhythm. Not footsteps, not the creature. Breathing. Uncontrolled. Panicked. From his vantage point, Kai could just make out a faint glow to the east, a pulsing blue shimmer of a survival beacon partially covered beneath a broken branch. Another cadet. From the size of the silhouette, Kai guessed it was the Provaxian male, Ur. The Provaxians had wide-set shoulders and a thick ridge of bioluminescent organs along the spine, natural traits for intimidation and communication, but disastrous for hiding in a place like this. Ur was crouched behind a cluster of thick ferns, trembling. His palms were pressed over his mouth, but the rising and falling of his back betrayed him. The glow on his spine pulsed every 5 seconds, like a beacon to death. Kai watched without moving, a silent observer as Ur tried to crawl backward. The predator arrived 2 seconds later. It did not leap or snarl. It simply walked into view, tall and horrifically elegant, as though it had always belonged in the gloom. Its skin flexed with subtle hues that echoed the forest around it, and its eyes shimmered with reflective layers. Deep, ancient, inhuman. Ur froze. The vorgren extended one clawed limb and tapped once, then again, then once more. Ur disappeared in a flash of light, ripped from the ground by the emergency extraction protocol. 3 cadets remained. Kai closed his eyes briefly, allowing only a breath of thought to move through him. He did not feel victorious. The thinning numbers only made things worse. Now, every mistake from the remaining few would draw the vorgren's attention closer to his location. He had survived so far by being invisible, but invisibility became harder to maintain when fewer targets remained. He was next in the path. It was inevitable. From a high cliff edge not far from his position, he detected movement. Someone was crawling along a ledge, slowly, but without silence. A small figure, light-framed. Probably the Tiari cadet, Vesha. She was nimble and small-bodied, but her species' main disadvantage was a high body temperature and a nervous system that responded to fear with intense pheromone discharge. Kai had noticed it before during training exercises. Her presence could trigger predator interest even if she made no noise at all. She paused at the cliff's edge, scanning the darkness. Kai saw the vorgren before she did. The creature had already triangulated her position. It moved along the outer ridge, never touching the open space. It used the natural contours of the terrain to stay hidden, much like Kai himself, and that, in itself, chilled Kai's blood. The predator was learning. Vesha stepped forward, and her foot dislodged a loose stone. It rolled down the cliff, bouncing and clattering through the ferns. The vorgren moved with surgical precision. Its limbs struck the cliff face like arrows. Within 2 seconds, it had reached her. It didn't bother to hiss or roar. It didn't need to. 3 quick pulses. Another beacon. 2 left. Kai and 1 other. The predator now paused for longer than before. It stood atop the ridge, its body framed in the dim lunar glow. It faced the forest, as if listening. Then it dropped into the shadows once more, silent as a falling leaf. The silence that followed was unbearable. Somewhere in that forest, the last remaining cadet, unknown to Kai, was probably watching, just like he was, waiting for the inevitable. But unlike Kai, that cadet had already moved at least twice during the night. He had heard rustles, distant and faint, but movement nonetheless. That meant the predator would track the path, narrow the circle, and force him or her into visibility. The next hour passed without sound. Kai's muscles began to burn, his back screamed for relief, his neck felt like concrete, his toes tingled from lack of blood flow. But he did not move. He fought against every biological urge, clinging to a truth as old as humanity itself. The longer one stayed hidden, the more powerful the silence became. A scream shattered the stillness. It was raw and desperate, a voice pushed to its limit. The last cadet had broken. Somewhere in the thickest part of the ravine, the predator had flushed him or her out, driven that poor soul into panic. Kai did not watch. He listened. 1, 2, 3, flash. Only 1 remained. A voice crackled through the sky, not from the predator, but from the Galactic Academy's loudspeaker drone hovering high above the test zone. It was the voice of the Zarnian commander. Final cadet. 12-hour survival requirement nearly complete. Predator remains active. Continue evasion until final beacon. The voice faded. Kai's eyes did not change. His limbs did not twitch. He remained as he was, not frozen in fear, but forged in it. He was no longer thinking as a student. He was thinking as prey. The predator knew that too. Somewhere deep within its instinct, the vorgren had realized the game had changed. The others had been easy. This one was not. This one did not flee, did not speak, did not radiate heat, did not exhale loudly. This one was dangerous in a different way, and so the predator decided to wait. It began circling the outer edge of Kai's terrain again, not approaching directly but tightening its loop, closer with each pass. It scraped tree bark gently, tested small stones with its claws, deliberately triggered natural sounds to draw a response. But nothing came. The human remained part of the world. When the 12th hour finally neared its end, the predator had crept close enough that Kai could feel its breath on the soil again. The air shifted around his ears. A thin droplet fell from one of the beast's fangs, landing on a leaf 1/2 meter from Kai's elbow. He did not flinch. The final extraction beacon sounded, long, low, final. A vertical beam of blue light shot down from the clouds, locking onto Kai's coordinates. The vorgren lifted its head. In a flash, the human was gone. The predator remained in the forest, alone. The game was over, but it knew, somewhere across the stars, that it had not won. The extraction beam snapped shut above the tree line, vanishing into the heavens like a thread cut from the sky. In its wake, the jungle stood still, blanketed by a heavy silence that felt earned rather than granted. Wind rolled slowly through the thick canopies, but nothing stirred on the ground. The vorgren crouched near the imprint Kai had left in the soil, its wide nostrils flaring once, twice, then going still. No trace remained of its final quarry, no scent, no heat, no trail, only the faint residue of moisture and the shape of a man carved in cold mud. Far above the clouds, aboard the Galactic Academy's primary orbiting vessel, a group of high-ranking instructors stood in a narrow debriefing chamber surrounded by translucent screens. The monitors displayed thermal readouts, motion trails, and body diagnostics. Only one remained active, Kai's. His vitals were strong, heart rate low, cortisol levels stable, oxygen saturation perfect. The biometric officer shook his head slightly. "No performance spike during extraction," he said quietly. He didn't panic, not even when the predator approached within 2 meters. The Tralaxian instructor folded her forearms across her chest and leaned toward the main feed. "Show the recording." "Last 90 seconds." A technician swiped his hand across the console. The playback began. It showed the vorgren moving slowly through the underbrush. Its head scanned the terrain in sharp jerks, nostrils pulsing with frustration. Then came the camera shift, an aerial view zooming into a patch of Earth that at first glance appeared undisturbed. Only after applying contrast did Kai's shape reveal itself, merged seamlessly with the ground. Not under it, not beside it, part of it. The Zarnian commander leaned closer. Pause. Enhance dorsal shoulder angle. The image clarified. Along the ridge of Kai's spine, flakes of bark and crushed lichen had been carefully pressed into the mud layer, breaking up any uniform pattern. His breathing remained shallow and mechanical, as if counting invisible numbers. His eyes were closed, lashes dusted in earth, unmoving. "He became the terrain," the commander muttered. The silence in the chamber deepened. An assistant entered the room and spoke in a low voice to the Zarnian. "Sir, the cadet has arrived in Bay 3, still in full survival condition, no medical anomalies. Requested a shower and hot tea." A ripple of laughter threatened to escape the room but died quickly under the weight of the moment. The Zarnian said nothing. He turned on his heel and strode toward the docking corridor. When the doors to Bay 3 parted, he found Kai standing just outside the decontamination field, dressed in standard academy grays, a white towel slung over his shoulders. His face was clean, but a line of red dirt still clung to the edge of his hairline. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met the commander's with the composure of a soldier, not a cadet. "Kai Moreno," the Zarnian said. "Report." Kai nodded. "Survived 12 hours. No contact. No pursuit confirmed." "No pursuit, because the creature couldn't find you," the commander replied. "You didn't just survive. You disappeared." Kai didn't smile. He didn't posture or preen the way most first-place finishers did. He simply stood with quiet discipline. "That was the point of the test, wasn't it?" The commander studied him. The human's pulse was barely elevated. He showed no signs of residual fear or trauma. "What camouflage technique did you use?" he asked. None of the other cadets were trained in such methodology. Kai looked past him, toward the transparent wall that revealed the black curve of Relkar's surface below. "I read about a unit back on Earth. Special Forces recon team during the Second Cold War. They were deployed in jungle zones with no tech. No backup, just mud, shadow, and patience. One of them survived 8 days with nothing but a bottle of water and a sharpened stick. I figured 12 hours would be manageable." The commander's mandibles twitched. "We analyzed your body heat signature. You suppressed your temperature by over 2 degrees without any medical regulation." Kai tilted his head slightly. "Breath control, pulse control, blood flow redirection. Takes practice." The Tralaxian instructor entered the bay then, accompanied by a tall Varkari scientist with crystalline eyes and skin like polished amber. She held a tablet in one hand, her gaze sharp as a scalpel. "Cadet," she said, "did you prepare your camouflage design in advance?" "No," Kai replied. "I studied topography and estimated soil moisture levels based on local weather. When I saw the terrain, I adjusted." "You embedded organic materials into your surface coat. Why?" "To disrupt visual patterning. Shadows don't form evenly on flat textures. The more irregular the surface, the harder it is to distinguish." The Varkari turned to the commander. "This isn't just field intuition. This is tactical artistry." The Tralaxian spoke again. "You were aware of the Predator's pattern recognition capabilities?" "Yes," Kai answered. "I noticed it looped terrain after intervals of 2 to 3 hours. It used pressure, not just pursuit. I guessed it was trying to flush cadets by proximity rather than chase." "And you didn't move once?" "Not unless I had to blink." The room went still again. Then the commander stepped forward, holding out a small black badge with a silver edge, the symbol of first-ranking graduate in advanced survival operations. Kai accepted it without ceremony. He looked down at it for a moment, then slid it into his pocket. "That all?" he asked. "Dismissed," the commander said. Kai nodded and turned toward the hall. He passed other cadets along the corridor, some still bearing visible welts and scratches, others whispering about extraction failures and shock treatment. No one approached him. No one spoke. Not yet. That night, the Academy mess hall remained unusually full, even after scheduled hours. Instructors occupied one corner, dissecting behavioral footage. Students clustered in clumps, gossiping across tables. Kai sat alone, tray empty except for a bowl of rice and a mug of black tea. His posture was the same, calm, efficient, unconcerned. Finally, someone approached. The Provaxian cadet, stood near his table. His bioluminescent ridges were dim, a sign of lingering embarrassment. He looked down at Kai, shifting uneasily. "You knew we were going to fail," said quietly. Kai looked up. "I knew what the Predator was built to exploit." "Why didn't you share your plan?" "Would you have believed it?" Kai asked, sipping his tea. Hesitated, then sat down across from him. "No," he admitted, "but maybe next time I would." Minutes later, others began joining. One by one. The Tiari girl, the Averell twins, even the Cerithian who had suffered the earliest extraction. No one said anything grand, no one praised, but they listened to how a human with no tech, no dampeners, and no suit survived the most unforgiving predator in the sector by becoming invisible. Later that week, the Academy's archive team requested an interview. Kai refused. Instead, he submitted a single-page report detailing his technique. No embellishment, no flair, just method and outcome. The report was filed under Unassisted Concealment Strategy, Human Origin Field Doctrine, and scheduled for optional review by senior cadets. Within 3 months, the Academy made it mandatory reading. But perhaps the greatest consequence unfolded behind closed doors. In the Training Development Wing, senior staff gathered to draft a new curriculum module. It would not be taught through simulations. It would require no equipment, no device, no suit, only terrain, instinct, and stillness. At the top of the new module file, above all tactical notes, one phrase was written in bold, "Movement is death," and below it, in smaller font, "Survival is not in the tools, it's in the silence." Weeks passed. The survival trial on Relkar 4 had faded from daily talk, yet its shadow lingered in the halls of the Galactic Academy. Protocols shifted subtly, lessons were revised, and cadets, especially the younger ones, began to carry themselves with a different kind of attention. Gone was the arrogant reliance on technology alone. In its place grew a quiet awareness of the body, the terrain, and the silence that stretched between moments of action. It was not a change imposed by doctrine. It was a shift seeded by example. Kai noticed the difference first during the week's environmental simulation drill. He had been assigned to observe rather than participate, a rare privilege given only to those with proven mastery. He sat on a bench at the upper tier of the observation deck, arms folded, eyes narrowed as a dozen cadets tried to cross an artificial canyon under constant aerial scans. The first to succeed did not wear the usual adaptive armor. She had coated her hands in gray dust and crawled across using shadow instead of stealth modules. Another cadet made use of a broken tree trunk to throw off motion sensors rather than jamming signals. Neither had copied Kai exactly, but both had changed how they thought. He respected that more than imitation. The Tralaxian instructor entered the observation chamber and took a seat beside him, her forearms moving with restrained elegance as she typed a report on her console. "You've created a fracture in our structure," she said without looking up. "That doesn't happen often." Kai didn't turn to her. "I didn't intend to." "True revolutions rarely are," she replied. "Most cadets who outperform the system do so by mastering the system. You, on the other hand, ignored it." He sipped from the canteen in his hand. "I didn't ignore it. I just didn't rely on it." She finally looked at him. "What's the difference?" He turned his head slightly. "Understanding the system means knowing when to trust it. Mastery is knowing when to abandon it." Her expression shifted, just a slight change in the tilt of her head, but he recognized it as approval. Later that night, as stars glinted across the vast expanse beyond the dormitory windows, Kai sat alone in the Academy's digital archive chamber. A single hollow screen hovered before him, displaying tactical files from civilizations older than his own. The words scrolled past his eyes: Chronari battle formations, Suran reflex techniques, Gorlai swarm coordination. Impressive, all of them. But alien. He closed the file. Instead, he opened a restricted segment, one labeled Earth, Primitive Warfare, Strategies, Unassisted Operations. A short list of entries appeared. Names, events, forgotten battles. His eyes scanned the top one, Operation Quiet Edge, Amazon Basin, year 2183. The file was thin, barely a few megabytes. But within it lay the foundation of what had saved him. Human persistence, human restraint, human stillness. He downloaded it to his personal log and exited the chamber without fanfare. By morning, word had spread. The Academy Council had voted unanimously to introduce a new elective module in the upcoming cycle. Not based on technology, engineering, or alien physiology, but Earth-based survival conditioning. No student would be forced to enroll. No grades would be assigned. The only requirement was presence and stillness. Some scoffed at the idea. Others signed up immediately. 1 week into the program, enrollment tripled. Kai never volunteered to teach it. He didn't need to. His name alone was written into the curriculum, and cadets regularly requested permission to observe his simulations. He allowed it when he felt like it. Not always, not often, but enough. Then came the summons. The Academy Chancellor herself, an ancient Warkari woman with skin of translucent bronze and eyes clouded with internal starlight, requested a personal audience. Kai stood before her in her domed observatory, hands behind his back, eyes forward. She spoke slowly, her voice like rain on glass. "Some of our oldest traditions have been reawakened by your actions. You've reminded this institution of something we forgot, that technology is only as strong as the hands that wield it, and hands are nothing without stillness." He said nothing. There was no response that felt necessary. She nodded once and continued. "You've been offered placement in the Special Reconnaissance Corps, Elite Operations, Advanced Clearance, Command Track." He felt the weight of the words settle into his chest. He hadn't chased recognition, but now it stood before him in full. "Accepted," he said. 3 months later, Kai stepped out of a long-range transport onto the surface of a classified moon. It was cold, windless, and covered in crystalline sand. Around him stood 6 other beings, each from different systems, each chosen by criteria few could guess. But all had one thing in common. They were watchers, listeners, ghosts in the field. The mission was simple: observe an unauthorized planetary construction zone established by an independent faction known for illegal terraforming. No contact, no weapons, no drones, only observation. Kai found a shallow ridge of sand along the southern edge and dropped to the ground. He scooped a handful of the crystalline particles, tasted the grain, noted its texture. Then he lay flat, let his breath slow, and began to disappear again. One of the others turned to him. "What are we looking for?" Kai didn't answer immediately. He waited until the wind shifted and the glass dunes around them began to hum softly. "Nothing," he said at last. "Unless they look for us first." Hours later, the opposing faction's scouts passed within 10 meters of his position. They didn't see him. The mission ended without a trace. Word of the outcome reached the Galactic Senate before Kai had even returned. His methods were studied. His field reports were analyzed. Several systems requested Earth instructors for new stealth training. One planet even petitioned to fund a school based entirely on primitive human techniques. Earth declined. Kai did not. Instead, he quietly accepted a long-term assignment at the edge of known space. He would not return to the academy. He had nothing left to prove. Instead, he would operate in the field, alone or with others like him, those who understood that to endure was not to advance, but to wait, to become the ground, the leaf, the breath between heartbeats. And on the wall of his quarters, scratched into the side of a worn metal panel, was a phrase he had once heard from his grandfather and now believed with unshakable certainty. Stillness is the oldest weapon. The stars blinked silently outside his window, and he blinked back.